Welcome into K-State Online. I am Mason Voth. That is Derek Young. Wednesday, October 29th. But we are doing the preview show a day early. Worked out better this week and also figured it was time to send some attention Texas Tech's way. Obviously, it was a big and important win for K-State over the weekend, but now they've got another one this weekend because it's a really weird situation to be in with this team, DY, because it's not realistic yet to throw them back into this Big 12 title hunt picture. But obviously, if you were to win this weekend against the team that I think is the most talented and the best team in the league, they would have two losses. You would have the tiebreaker. And all things considered, it's a pretty navigable schedule down the stretch, minus the trip to Salt Lake City. But that would also be significant because you could put yourself in a position to get the tiebreaker over Utah, and that will be an important game in all this as they also stay in this race of 8 teams that still have 2 or fewer losses in the Big 12. So K-State is a game away from making this a legitimate conversation with only 25% of their season left. And to me, that's kind of the jumping off point here for K-State and Texas Tech is that Tech has to feel like they're getting K-State at the absolute worst time. K-State probably feels somewhat similarly about Texas Tech, considering Baron Morton is going to be back this weekend. Now, Joey McGuire admitted yesterday that if K-State and Texas Tech played last weekend, Baron Morton was playing. It tried to be very nice about it to Oklahoma State and say, the percentage chance of us winning that game didn't change very much based on our quarterback against Oklahoma State, unlike this one, which is just being honest. It's the truth there. So where do things stand entering this game from your point of view with K-State and Texas Tech?
You illustrated and laid it out perfectly. Now's not the time to really talk about a Big 12 championship shot. But if Kansas State were to upset Texas Tech at home, which I think is on the table, we'll talk about whether or not either of us think they're going to beat Texas Tech later on in the show.
I still haven't made up my mind on that yet.
Yeah, but I think Kansas State, in their best version of themselves, is capable of winning this game, especially at home. Now, if Texas Tech is the best version of themselves, then I don't think Kansas State has a shot. So they're going to need Texas Tech to be a little sloppy to get away with it. But I agree. If they are to upset the Red Raiders on Saturday in Manhattan, 2:30 kick on Fox, got the A team for the announcer crew as well. I think that Kansas State is a viable contender all of a sudden for the Big 12 championship game in Arlington. And then we'll be sitting here in this same spot next week talking about them being a viable contender. Because at that point, you're going to be favored over Oklahoma State and Colorado. And your matchup with Utah and Salt Lake is tough, but that is basically an elimination game at that point because Utah also has 2 Big 12 losses. The issue that you run into if you are Kansas State, even if you are to beat Texas Tech, is that you don't get a shot at BYU, Cincinnati, or Houston, which is, I guess, a blessing and a curse. Like, it's funny that you've already got 2 conference losses and you don't really get a chance at a head-to-head tiebreaker against any of those teams or to give them a loss. At the same time, you were given a pretty fortuitous Big 12 schedule, if you think about that as well, where you only have to play one of the top 4 teams in the league at the same time. You just never capitalized on it because he started so poorly this year.
Yeah.
And I know we kind of already talked about it last week. It's funny. We can get mad at the Army game all we want, get mad at the Arizona game all we want, even get mad at the Iowa State game all we want. But the game that's hurting Kansas State the most is the fourth quarter collapse in Waco.
Yeah. And it's so strange too to think about it because that's one of these games that we're lumping in where like the team played pretty well in that game, and
Coach
it's just
down late.
You had one horrific moment, and I put a lot of that game on poor coaching. I think it was probably the worst coaching situation of Chris Kleinman's career in that game, at least at K-State.
That in Houston last year, I think. Yep.
Yeah. And Houston last year, I think maybe there was some complacency, but I kind of get where they're coming from because they didn't want to just have like try to bleed the game out and get lucky that way, and they were a little too aggressive,
Yeah,
or at least too scared of their running game not working. But and I get it, like wet
it's
game, they're probably thinking a ball could be punch free and we're not going to get any yards. Maybe we have something positive that happens throwing it, and obviously nothing positive happened throwing it in that second half.
I think that Houston and Baylor game honestly felt the same. It's just
Yeah,
one was a lower scoring game, one was a higher scoring
true.
game, but it's a situation where you had a multiple score lead late in the ball game, could have ran out the
Yeah.
clock and chose not to.
And now, ironically, both may end up costing you trips to Arlington, as that started a downfall last year, and it put you behind the 8 ball for K-State this year in terms of being 1-2 in league play and having to try to rip off 8 straight wins, which K-State has now done, or excuse me, 7 straight wins, which K-State now has a few of those in their pocket. So,
and you talked about 8 teams having 2 conference losses or less in the Big 12, and that is absolutely accurate. And I only brought up a few of those teams because I think it's going to take care of itself in a little bit. Like at this point, I really don't expect TCU and Arizona State to stay that way.
Yes. Well, yeah, Arizona State's getting loss number 3 this weekend at Iowa State. No Sam Leavitt, no Jordan Tyson. You're not beating. I get Iowa State's beat up, but you're not winning that game.
Yeah, you might not. Actually, I have no idea who's going to win that game because I don't know if Iowa State's capable of winning right now.
Yeah, I mean, you would think they've still got at least enough guys, and they're probably a little
boy, they look like one of the 5 worst teams in the Big 12 right now. It's like Kansas State and Iowa State have flip flopped.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, you're really just concerned about Utah, Texas Tech, Houston, Cincinnati, BYU, and then BYU and Cincinnati and Houston all have like a scheduling advantage essentially with what's left for them
they don't play each other, right?
Yeah, no, BYU and so actually I think Cincinnati and BYU play. I think in Cincy later in the year.
BYU does not have a scheduling advantage because they still have to play Cincinnati.
They have to go to Tech and to Cincinnati.
Yeah.
I probably view it that way just because I have a hard time wrapping my head around Cincinnati being this. But
they've won 7 straight.
I know. And they were, they could have won that game against Nebraska and Arrowhead. So we'll get into it down the road with the Big 12 stuff later. But I just kind of setting the scene here because that is what is on the table here if K-State wins. Like, this is a pretty big swinging game. And I thought after the way K-State took care of business in Lawrence that you were going to get a pretty juiced up crowd because Texas Tech, to me, they are still the team that deserves the most focus and attention in the Big 12. They had to deal with Morton being banged up. It cost them a game against Arizona State, but they're still really good, and I still think that they're the Big 12's best shot. But I also think that K-State is the best shot to get Texas Tech this season because I don't think that BYU is going to go to Lubbock and win. I think unless K-State knocks Tech off their pedestal this weekend and it kind of snowballs on them, but this is the shot, and I think people will be amped up for it. I told Drew I liken this to a little bit more like the situation when K-State was coming back home to face Oklahoma State after losing at TCU in 2022. Now, obviously, different circumstances. That team had 2 losses. This one has 4, but it feels like that same type of thing where you kind of have this galvanizing type home game on the horizon. And I think, we're seeing a different team right now. So it sets up as well in terms of what you're doing yourself if you're K-State. Obviously not for what Tech has going on right now. They're getting a little bit healthier with Morton coming back. But I think this is going to be a game now. And 3-4 weeks ago, we were probably thinking that Tech was showing up and winning this thing by 28 points.
Yeah, no, I expect a competitive game. I know the final outcomes ended up being what they were. But if we just take in the last handful of games, Tech, they lost to Arizona State on the road. So they're going on the road this week to Manhattan. They spanked KU 40, but it was the same score that K-State beat KU by 42-17. And if you watch both of those games, Kansas State was better against KU than Tech was. Because I know Tech got out to a hot start, but they let KU get back into the game before finally pulling away once again late. Oklahoma State doesn't really count. That's not a real Big 12 team. They, I'm not sure Oklahoma State could win the MAC this year, so I'm not giving you any
Yeah,
credit.
I don't think they could.
Yeah, and
I
then
mean, we already saw West Virginia lose to a MAC team, and West
yeah,
Virginia is better than Oklahoma State. So
by far, I think. And then Tech, that Houston game was closer than really the 35-11 score would indicate. I think if you really watch some of their games start to finish, they usually start fast and they finish strong. The middle of the game gets a little murky on them, and even everyone was impressed. Their first big moment was when they beat the crap out of Utah, right? Beat the crap out of Utah on the road in Salt Lake City. I think that was a tied game going into the fourth quarter.
yeah, well, it's 10-3 game, one score game.
Yeah.
Tech scored 24 points in the fourth quarter.
So
It did. Let me see here just to make sure
I
the
guess,
pacing of that
yeah,
one. Utah did get it to 13-10 with
yeah.
10 and a half minutes to play.
My point is some of these final scores are not as indicative as maybe the game went. Tech is really good team. They are far and away. You said it. I agree. Far and away the best team in the Big 12 when they are at their best. But they haven't exactly been as invincible as what the final scores would tell you.
Well, and like this just goes kind of to, where my concern has been all along is that I I'm not a huge believer in Joey McGuire anymore. Like he got off to a hot start. They finished strong. His last season, I thought, okay, he's going to be in that grouping of guys where you're thinking they can do this, but then it just kind of kept being, no, kind of messed up there, like couldn't do it. And now, great, he's finally doing it. But we know that Tech has an overwhelming advantage in terms of what they've stockpiled in the Big 12, which all the power to them. Like that's how it works. Like
That's good coaching too. Yeah.
This is a little, well, I mean, it's good administrative work and good alumni support, I would say. I don't know about like what coaching level. I mean, look, there are teams that have studs. We saw Texas do it year in, year out, come and have all the stars in the conference and fall flat on their face. But so there's a baseline there. But like, I look at Joey McGuire and I go like that could be the kind of the thing that holds you back a little bit. So I like they're not invincible, and I don't think that they come into these games and you can just put the foot on the gas and take it off of you, because I don't know that they have quite the leadership to do that right now.
If they have an invincible part to them, it is their defense. Like that is lights out, and they are tough to score on, and they are tough to block. And I worry if Kansas State can block these guys because they are.
I do too.
They have an I'll just say everybody hates this descriptor, but they have an SEC type front seven. Like their front seven can hang with some of the better SEC teams in the country, and I mean that as an extreme compliment. So, but I know folks like roll your eyes. You're giving a pat on the back to the SEC. Well, SEC is a different defensive line. I think most people would at least acquiesce that part of it. So, but at the same time, you flip to the other side of the ball. They're a little bit streaky, but what has held them back, I think, and what has allowed teams to stay in the game at times, at least in the middle third, would be that they don't finish drives. I'm sure you probably have some statistics on that because you run that for Power Cat Game Day, that portion. But the percentage of times that they have to kick a field goal and settle for a field goal rather than scoring touchdown is, I think, close to 100th in the country.
Yeah. So for reference, Tech has the most red zone scoring situations in the league this year. They've
42.
scored 42 attempts. They've scored 37 times. They are 8th in terms of scoring percentage, so that's 88%.
Yeah.
They have scored touchdowns though on just 24 of those 37 occasions. So they are 13 of 13 on field goals. So they have settled for a field goal 13 times when they have made it to their opponent's 20-yard line or closer. For reference, K-State has only done that 7 times, and K-State's 23 for 25 in terms of their red zone scoring. That's 92%. So the K-State scored a touchdown 16 of 25 times that they've made it to the opponent's 20, and then they're 7 for 7 on field goals. So you're absolutely right. Like they are going to stall some drives out there. Like it's almost stunning that they could have the most trips to the red zone in the Big 12, and that's the team that's more times than not, like they're just barely scoring more touchdowns than not coming away with anything or a field goal. So
Yep.
to me, that is significant because K-State's defense has been really
Yep.
good at that this year, because conversely, K-State has one of the better red zone defenses in the Big 12 right now. The only two teams that are better than K-State, BYU, just insane stuff for them. That the BYU Magic, 69% is their red zone defense. So only 69% of the
We
time are
we
teams scoring when they get to the 20-yard line.
By the way, I no longer call it magic. It seems really voodoo and all they do, but they keep doing it. So
Yeah, that's true. I
it's a
guess it's
skill at this point.
disingenuous of me. Cincinnati then at 76.9%, they're eighth, and then K-State 79%, tied with Arizona State for third. So 29 trips to the red zone for K-State opponents. Only 23 times have they scored. K-State's held their opponent to 7 field goal attempts in that stretch as well. So
Which is wild because and I know I said the game was the score is a little bit bigger here, 35-11 over Houston than the actual game would indicate. Part of that is because Texas Tech was just kicking field goal after field goal against Houston. I think they made 7 field goals against Houston.
And then K-State also has the most red zone turnovers forced in the Big 12 this year at 3. That's actually tied with BYU. 2 fumbles and 1 pick for K-State, 3 picks for BYU. Or BYU is getting people. They have 5 turnover on downs in the red zone this year.
I did, yeah. They what they do is incredible. Both of these teams, Kansas State and Texas Tech, nose for the ball. Because Chris Kleiman said this, and he's absolutely right. If you watch a Texas Tech game, the way that they can punch out fumbles is I don't know the last time that I have seen it. I don't know that I've seen it at the college level.
Yeah.
I think there were some NFL teams that used to be really good at that back in the day. I remember a Bears team being really good at it. Maybe at Brian Urlacher, but man, Jacob Rodriguez, and I'll take some flack for this because we pumped up Austin Romaine before the season. I don't really regret doing that, but it was a disservice to Jacob Rodriguez because he's far and away the best linebacker. It's not even close in the Big 12.
To back up what you're saying with the numbers, Tech has forced 13 fumbles this year. That is the most in the Big 12. That's over 1.5 fumbles forced per game. That also doesn't take into consideration that they have 8 interceptions this year as well. Houston's also on this. Houston's forced 12 fumbles this season, so it must be something about the Cougars because K-State
also makes sense. Might be a system thing because Texas Tech got their defensive coordinator from Houston, right? Sheila Wood came over from Houston. Yep.
This might drive you crazy. Iowa State has only forced 2 fumbles this season, and as you know, one of them was Joe Jackson in the red zone in Ireland.
Also, and also the more that this goes on, the more like I don't feel bad for Gene Taylor, but like
I don't feel bad for him, but it's backfired in a massive way.
I don't feel bad for Gene Taylor, but he is probably going to get the frustration that he deserves for a little bit. I get you had to take the money, or he thinks that the athletic department had to take the money, whatever. That's not really a conversation or a debate worth having anymore. But if you play that game when it's probably was going to be played, you're probably getting an entirely different Iowa State team, and your record looks remarkably different. At the same time, does Chris Kleiman beat Iowa State? Still, I don't know.
And I could be talking out of my behind here, but college football playoff appearance money might be better than Ireland appearance money.
Yeah, I don't even know what that is.
I don't either. I'm just assuming that you might rather have that than Ireland on your resume, especially when it was a loss. So those are some of the more miscellaneous things or interesting things from this game and how you look at these teams. And just in general, looking at how things have worked out and performed. K-State and Texas Tech, there are some things here that are beneficial to K-State, similar to the matchup with KU last week. Some of those red zone numbers and conversion numbers you could go and look at and start to say, oh, actually, that's pretty good. Now, you talked about the Tech defense. This is one of the things. They're great on both sides. Tech is second best in the Big 12 in terms of opponent third downs. Surprisingly, the only team better on third down this year is UCF, which is strange. But Tech is holding opponents to under 30% third down conversions. While on the flip side, Tech's converting over half of their third down opportunities this year.
What I will say is, Texas Tech hasn't really ran the ball well outside of, like, their rushing numbers are really inflated by what they did against Pine Bluff, Kent State, and I'm trying to remember, probably
Oregon State.
Oregon State. I don't. Well, who did they have 300 yards on? Was that Houston? I don't know.
Probably Houston. Yeah, I mean they're KU.
No,
Their running back ran for 263 against KU.
Yeah, I was going to say Cameron Dickey had that huge game against
Yeah.
KU. I would say that, like, their three worst rush defenses they played, I think, were Kent State, KU, and Arkansas Pine Bluff. It really inflates their rushing numbers because I think they're pretty pedestrian against everybody else they've played, which I would say that probably is reflective of them not being good in the red zone, because when you get in the red zone, you got to be able to run the ball. So it kind of goes hand in hand there. We talk about Bear Morton being very critical for them because, like, you could tell after the Will Hammond like shine wore off a little bit, they needed Bear Morton. They're a little bit better with Bear Morton than they were with Will Hammond, who started to stall. Bear Morton also is being propped up by getting to play Arkansas, Pine Bluff, Kent State, and Oregon State.
Yeah, that he's missed a few in there. Oh, well, as we talked about, like he wasn't playing particularly well against Utah until Hammond came in, and that's where, like, I unfairly, I think, discounted Baron Morton at times this year and in the offseason. And probably was too quick, like many, to anoint Will Hammond, but like he was not playing well in that game against Utah, and he 12-19, 2 picks, no touchdowns, like. The QBR was bad. Like, and I get it was a sloppy game for basically the first 3 quarters. Nobody played well, but that's one of those deals where, like you're saying here, like, what are you going to get from him on Saturday? Because you don't really know based off of what he's done so far this year.
And he could just get hurt again too, right? Like,
Yeah.
he gets banged up so much. Now and it's weird because they have a good offensive line, and now both of their quarterbacks have been hurt multiple times this year, which is wild to consider. But, like, I was looking at, like, Kansas State. He's been at Texas Tech for 4 years. He's played Kansas State just once. It's true freshman year, he didn't play that many games, so he didn't play in the Kansas State game. His sophomore year, or whatever, the second year was 2022, I think. Didn't play in that game because he was hurt, I believe. 2023, he played but got benched, I believe, in the game against Kansas State.
I think he might have gotten hurt in that one, and then it was
whatever
the.
Well, one game, 2022, he didn't play against K-State. He was just out because of an injury. 2023, he was like 7 of 14 or 14 of 21, only 125 yards. Cole thought he got benched in that game is what happened. And then 2024, Texas Tech didn't even play K-State. So it's bizarre with how many games and years that Bear Morton has been basically the quarterback for Texas Tech. He hasn't really played against Kansas State that much.
Jake Strong was the guy that came in for him in 2023. I was thinking of the reason why I could remember who he was.
Then he probably did get hurt, because I don't think they would willingly go to Jake Strong in that situation.
You wouldn't think, but I don't know. I thought it was that he got hurt, but again, anytime a Texas Tech quarterback disappears, I just assume they got hurt, because they always do.
What I recall is Jake Strong was brutal when he
was tough. He threw 3 picks, didn't do a lot of good there, and obviously Avery Johnson had a nice day. We'll take a quick pause. We'll come back and resume with best bets, and then we'll get into some more of the stuff with K-State and Texas Tech. All right, best bets time as we are ready to rock and roll. Here's a look at what happened the last time we did this. 2-1 week for both of us. Illinois killed me. Iowa State really looked like it was going to be good for the first little bit, and then DY doesn't call it BYU Magic anymore. I do. It took over, and they won. They ended up getting blasted, but all the others worked out for us. So a decent week.
I will say I kind of got lucky on Miami. They had to outscore Stanford 35-0 in the second half to cover.
Well, that's just Miami's MO. They kind of run things up late.
It was 7-7 at halftime, I think, against Stanford.
Here is what we've got on tap this week. I've got some weird ones for you. Syracuse, -2 at home against North Carolina. Ohio State, -20.5 against Penn State. And then this is where I'm getting a little weird and wacky because Cal is going to get to play at home against the darling of college football that nobody's talking about this year, number 15 Virginia, who
Overtime.
we've had a lot of thoughts about Virginia over the last couple of whole season, really, here on KSO because they've popped up, and I've been like, Chandler Morris, what are we doing here? You noted, and I've noticed that they've been playing really close games. 3 of their last 4 games, all wins, by the way, have gone to overtime. They beat Florida State in double overtime. They beat Louisville in overtime. They beat Washington State by 2. Shout out Cougs for the win last week. And they beat North Carolina by 1 in overtime after UNC went for 2 at the end of first overtime instead of prolonging it, which is the right move in that situation. This team has to be running on fumes. They've been dodging losses at every turn this year, and now they have to go all the way out west to face Cal, who hard to figure out this year. Cal might kind of suck, but they're 5-3, and their quarterback might be able to, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, might be able to put together a solid game every once in a while. Plus, Cal, what do you do after you go lose to Virginia Tech in overtime? You want to get back home and win a game because you shouldn't lose to a trash team like Virginia Tech. So that's the logic for Cal winning this weekend.
I like the logic. I didn't even remember Cal coming off an overtime. They're both coming off overtime games. Cal is a weird team to figure out. They've also got smoked, I think, by didn't they get shut out 31-0 by San Diego State earlier this season?
Well, that's really kind of the only weird outcome on their schedule, aside from they got blasted at home by Duke. So here's the weird thing about them. They beat Minnesota early in the year by 2 scores.
What's Minnesota though? I mean, I know they beat Nebraska,
Yeah.
but Iowa blasted them last week.
Yeah, look, that's all fair. I mean, Minnesota's 3 losses this year at Cal, to Ohio State by 39 and at Iowa by 38. Maybe Iowa's just good. You ever consider that? Wrong team always wins Cyhawk, DY. We should have known when Iowa State won this year that Iowa was actually going to turn out to be okay.
There's a chance they are good. Maybe Minnesota's just bad on the road. Aren't all those on the road too?
Yeah. Yes, those all are on the road. So tough road year for PJ Fleck and the boys.
I like what you're doing there with Ohio State and Syracuse too.
Yeah, I know. I think some people might go, oh, well, they came close. Like, let's get back on the Belichick thing. They got to win at some point. Syracuse, not great, but I would say that they have, if I had to venture to guess, I think Fran Brown is one of the coaches in the country that he's going to have the team with this cornball way of firing them up to make sure they don't lose in the dome to North Carolina. So I'm in on the Qs.
And Ohio State should be Penn State by 3 scores. So
yeah, I mean, what are we doing still thinking Penn State can keep it inside of that number? That felt like candy from a baby. All right, you like the Illini this week, turn of events. Normally it's me.
Yeah, I hope they don't burn me like they did you last week when they just basically laid an egg against Washington. But they're back at home. It's almost a disrespectful line for them to only be a 12.5 point home favorite against Rutgers, who's been despondent basically the entire season.
Rutgers is scrappy. Plus, you remember last year how Rutgers lost this game in Piscataway? This is a revenge game. Pat Bryant on the last play of the game, just knifing through the defense on 4th and long.
I don't think Rutgers is scrappy. They got blown out by.
They beat Purdue on the road last week. They're battle tested.
Well, that's another reason why I wanted to fade them this week, because did you see Greg Schiano celebrate after that game? You would have thought he won the Super Bowl.
Well, the guy's only 2 wins away from bowl eligibility now.
Yeah, but they got blasted by Washington, got blasted at Oregon, Oregon.
Oregon sucks, They could barely beat Penn State.
Yeah, so I don't like Rutgers. I think it's a good spot to fade them.
I like that.
Arkansas, love it. Got my Woo Pig Suey. I love this game, to be quite honest. Mississippi State just took Texas to the wire. Good time to fade them. Arkansas they are right there in every game. They're going to get over the hump at some point, or they're just going to lose every game by 3. I don't know. This could be it, but I just feel like Bobby Petrino, they're going to score 40. So if they can hold Mississippi State to even 30, they cover this.
I think your Arkansas get over the hump game is either
LSU.
One of the last 2 weeks, either at Texas or against Missouri, and they ruined one of those teams' seasons.
Texas, there's a chance it's the Texas because that is like the what do they call it? The letdown look ahead sandwich. That's all verbal, guys, because Texas has to go to Arkansas, I think, in between playing Georgia and Texas A&M.
Yeah. Which, I mean, Texas, learn how to schedule SEC, bro. Come on. Where's the Citadel when you need them?
Yeah. Come on. You could tell they haven't been in the league long enough.
Yeah, rookies.
K-State Tech under 52.5. I would be shocked if this is over. That seems like way too many points in this game. I'll just say it. I have big time concerns about Kansas State's ability to score in this one, or at least be down successful. I think if we're talking about it, we'll get to the nightmare scenario, but blocking Texas Tech could be a nightmare scenario, and that terrifies me. At the same time, like, I think this Kansas State defense is, I don't think what they've been doing is a fluke. I think they have turned a corner, and we've talked about it. The Texas Tech offense leaves a little bit to be desired, at least in relation to their defense. So if this game goes over 52.5, like I said, that would be probably more surprising to me than if Tech won by 7 or if K-State won by 7, to be quite honest.
All right. Well, we'll take another pause for another ad break in there. And when we come back, we will get into some of that stuff, plus a question that I asked Drew yesterday that you're kind of alluding to right there. All right. K-State Tech back on the main focus of the week. I'll ask you this because I talked about this with Drew yesterday. What from K-State over the last handful of games, and specifically what they did in Lawrence, is for real versus what is something that you go, I get that it's been better, but I can't fully buy into it yet. Like for me, the offensive line thing, it's gone from killing you to you can pass by when you're not facing really good teams on it. But like, I don't think they're really equipped to handle what Tech is about to throw at them, or, even when they go to like Utah, for example.
Absolutely. I don't trust this offensive line against at least a solid defensive front. And you're not just getting a solid defensive front here. You're getting the best defensive front you'll see this year. You're getting the best defensive front you've probably seen in a few years, if we're being quite honest. Texas Tech is that good in the front seven. So we're talking about what's for real, what isn't. I don't think this offensive line is for real. I think they are good enough to beat up on the bad teams, to steal something that you said. So that's how I feel. I don't think it's impossible for Kansas State to score, but I think the offensive coaches are going to have to dial and scheme stuff up and get the short passing game probably going as a substitute for the running game. And some folks won't want to hear this. This is a game where you really wish you had Dylan Edwards.
Yeah, I mean, you want somebody that can wiggle a little bit, pop one, have the big play, and really just have the talent and athleticism to outmatch or match what Tech is going to have on the other side.
Run through some things just with his speed, because he's the only one from a sheer talent perspective that I was like, man, mano y mano, how do we feel about that? Well, maybe not terrible if I have Dylan Edwards. That's the way that I would. And especially going against when you are this, probably when the talent discrepancy is this wide, we're talking about their defensive front and Kansas State's offensive front, you just kind of want that difference maker or someone that can pop off an explosive. Because, hey, if you get beat on 90% of the plays, who cares that the other 10% you're getting 20, 30 yards a shot. So they'll need to dial up some explosive plays to overcome what I think it will be an overwhelming front for the offensive line. In terms of pressure, the offensive coaches probably have the biggest challenge and the most pressure on them in this game, because they can't just go out and call, a good play sequence and think they're going to win, because the execution's probably not going to be there most of the time, just because the guy across from them is going to be better in most cases. There's not a lot of one-on-one matchups to be won. So you're going to need the coaches to scheme up and dial up an explosive play here and there every 10 plays. And that's a lot to ask. So that's why I went with the under 52.5. That's why, and I think if Kansas State's going to win the game, it has to be a low-scoring affair. If it gets up in a higher-scoring game, I don't think they have a shot. I think I said on the 3 Mile podcast, like, I think you have to hold Texas Tech to 21 or less to feel good about winning this game. So that's the way I feel. What is for real, though, I think is the defense, because I think they've shown time and time again the last few weeks. They get a little bit better, too. But if you even scratch out like the 3 or 4 explosive plays that just gutted them in prior ball games, too, it's just like, man, they are getting it done. Now, they had the KU game this past week where they actually limited all explosive plays, and you see how good it looked. So you're probably not going to get to that kind of product every game. It's hard to limit explosive plays all 60 minutes, but you do it for the most part, and you're going to get a defense that can probably hold Texas Tech to 21 points, but it will take a very, very strong performance to do so.
How should K-State attack Texas Tech offensively? What's the best route for them to try and get this thing done? Because we know it's going to be tough either way. Like, Tech is just talented top to bottom defensively, which
Yeah.
I think, to what you're talking about, like, you wish you had Dylan Edwards for this game. I think that leads me to believe that if you want to win this, you got to take your chances with just giving it up to Avery Johnson and throwing to those receivers, because that, to me, I think that's a real thing. And you want Avery Johnson to play with the same level of emotion that he did against Kansas, because I thought that was significant on Saturday.
I don't disagree. The issue here is that I think you need explosiveness, and if you're going to get explosiveness, it probably has to be in the passing game or some interesting wrinkles or tweaks with Avery Johnson in the run game. But how much do you want to do that? Um, so that's, and they haven't really got a lot of rushing explosiveness from Avery Johnson, even though he's been more willing to run, and I appreciate that, and I think that's been a big deal. So he can pose a run pass threat. Um, Outside of that Baylor touchdown run, I don't know if we're talking about any big runs. So the rushing explosiveness is probably not going to be there. Passing explosiveness is hard against Tech just because you got to get the ball out so quick so you don't get sacked. I mean, there's a lot of just different things to consider when going up against this Texas Tech defense, because you're like, man, they're going to beat us. They're going to probably win more plays than we are, so we have to be more explosive. But it's hard to be explosive when you have to get the ball out quick against them to prevent the sacks, because they can pressure the quarterback so well with their front four, with Romello Height, with Lee Hunter, with David Bailey. David Bailey is 10 and a half sacks already. 10 and a half sacks would have been the most in the Big 12 the last few years. He wouldn't even had to get any more. So that's just how dominant that he's been. So can the offensive line play their tails off in the game of their life? We'll see. I have my doubts. So if you're going to get an explosive play, it's going to have to be yards after the catch almost, unless they can pass protect. And nobody has really against Texas Tech.
Yeah, you've got a heck of a challenge in front of you if you're K-State. Also, to back up what you were talking about with your reasoning for the under, you think it's going to be a close game, and if K-State's going to win it, you have to keep Tech around a certain number. You're probably not going to go over much if you're K-State. I mean, the only loss Tech has this year was 26-22, so you're under that number. So it was 48 points. Tech only scored 22, and then all the other games, you let Tech get to. I mean, Tech scored basically the equivalent of 5 touchdowns in every game this year, and all of their wins are by more than 2 scores. So it can get pretty tricky in there.
You got to keep them out of the end zone, which has been something that teams have done against them.
They just haven't done it enough. Tech amplifies the opportunities, and so then you run into some issues there.
Because of that defense. Because of that defense.
Yeah.
Yep.
You give your dream and nightmare scenarios for K-State right here.
Dream scenario is a little bit of a similar formula to the past few weeks, where you're getting a lot of takeaways. I think that can make an impact, because we're talking about how tough this Texas Tech defense is, and it's tough to run on them when you don't have a great running game to begin with. Like, Kansas State barely ran the ball. They didn't run the ball well against KU. The same team where Cameron Dickey basically ran for 300 yards on. So, like, I don't trust this running game. So, and then passing game, it's like, it's hard to pop up explosiveness if you can't protect. And not a whole lot of teams can protect against that Texas Tech pass rush. So what do? Short fields. Give me some turnovers. Kansas State, the most takeaways in college football. I think that's the ideal thing. And then, so you're stealing possessions away from their offense when you do that, but also giving yourself a short field for your offense. I think that's got to be the formula. You'll hold them to field goals and not touchdowns, even when they do get in the red zone. I think that's the dream scenario and probably the formula to win. I think that's something that Arizona State did as well. But you also can't turn it over yourself. And like I said, Jacob Rodriguez is one of the best guys at forcing turnovers, at least forcing fumbles that I've ever watched play college football. He's that good. Nightmare scenario is you can't block.
Yeah.
And if you can't block, then you could score 10 points or less in this game.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough for K-State. You're gonna have to get a good performance because we've seen the games where things have been poor blocking and they've gotten overwhelmed up front, and there's only so much you can do there. And to this point in his career, Avery Johnson hasn't shown himself to be the best processor in those situations, nor like you don't have a ton of time, so it's not the most fair thing. But I think
He
he has
can't.
not handled it well. What you think back to the intentional grounding safety he took at Iowa State last year. He took an intentional grounding at Colorado. He was bad against Houston in the rain when, you didn't get much help from your offensive line. Like we've seen it time and time again.
He panicked into a throw against the blitz when he threw the pick six at
Yeah.
Baylor.
Yeah. And he also, I think it's been better, but like he's going to have to just be more of a willing scrambler if he thinks it's there, because more than any game ever this year, this is if there are yards there to take, you take them against Texas Tech's defense. So we'll see how it goes. You mentioned at K-State, 17 turnovers this year they've forced on defense. The only two teams, oddly enough, that are better than them, Southern Miss has 15 interceptions this season, so they have 19 total turnovers, and SMU has 20 somehow that they've racked up. So K-State being at that high, like we talked at one point this year that K-State's turnover luck seemed like it should change from last year where they were hard to come by. This year they've got them. Unfortunately, they just hurt themselves so much early on with a bunch of disjointed play everywhere else.
Two other things that just kind of came to my mind is Avery Johnson's also, we've seen him kind of circle around in the pocket a few times just because he knows he's more athletic than the pass rushers that are going after him, right? That he can kind of get away and even throw it away and save you yardage. Be careful when you do that against Texas Tech, because those pass rushers are a little bit different, and you do that too much, they'll get you for a 20-yard loss. That's something that worries me. Sometimes against Texas Tech is a little bit different. You can't do to Texas Tech what you do against a lot of other Big 12 teams. So just eating it and taking like a 5 or 7 yards of sack yardage is better than getting dinged for 15 or 20, which Texas Tech is capable of doing. Also, mitigate. I can't believe we're still saying this. Mitigate the special teams mistakes.
Oh, gosh.
You do not want to lose to Texas Tech because your special teams is ass. Like point blank. You want to know the most ridiculous stat of this season is Kansas State's offense has only turned the ball over 3 times. The special teams has turned it over 5 times.
That is insane. Yeah, so 2 picks from Avery and 1 fumble by Joe Jackson in Ireland. And then Dylan Edwards muff punt. They got lucky it didn't cost them. Nuremberg fumble against North Dakota. They did give up points there. Was it a muff punt against, or the onside kick that hit Mikey Bergeron against Army? Then Sterling Lockett muffed a punt at Arizona, and then Nuremberg against Kansas. Yeah. Here's where I go on it, because this is really tricky because
Bear catch the kickoff. You are not you're not getting to the 25 even when you don't turn it over.
Here's the deal. I think there's a threshold in the game on when it should start, because like Nuremberg's speed is a legitimate threat back there. He does have 1 return this year. You can see why they want him to be aggressive back there. Now, let's just get out in front of it. This is not meant to be disrespectful. Salute to service. He did do it against Army. So I might need to see a bigger return against a Big 12 opponent first. But like, don't quit starting games or important moments of the game by taking the ball out, because I go back to that Baylor game and they were down to like their 4th and 5th options returning kicks, and they were still letting them bring it out. And that at that point, that's on Chris Kleiman. Like, you either have to tell those guys stop, or you have to make it clear to Nate Katzer that those guys need to stop.
Absolutely.
If you get down in this game, you're down Texas Tech scores a touchdown and they go up by 10 at some point in the third quarter, or you feel like you need some kind of spark where you're trailing, there you go. Turn it on. Let him rip. See if he can be used as a weapon for you. But there is no reason why you should put yourself in a position like you did on Saturday, where because he's loose with the ball. I noticed it in Ireland. I thought he could lose a ball this year, and then he had the one tackle that got made on him against North Dakota is when I popped off the text to Drew and Scott, and I said he will fumble on a kickoff return this year. He did it on the very next one, and then obviously last weekend was a big deal. So you have to be smart about when you utilize it.
I understand that he took one back, but like you said, that was against Army. But also, like, another thing, it would be different if he also had that return and then a bunch of other returns that went beyond the 25. But it feels like every other attempt has been short of the 25.
Yeah, there's a lot that are coming up short, and you're welcoming unnecessary or like awkward hits, and he's just like, bless him for being this aggressive and giving it his all, but like there's just some things he's trying to pull off that you're not going to be able to do. There's a lot of jumping to what he does. There's a lot like use your speed as the weapon there, and if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. Like that's you look back to what Dylan Edwards did on the punt return against Arizona last year, and that was just dude's elite speed led to him taking that thing back. And that's how you need to treat these kickoffs right now. So it's just such a weird spot to be in right now if you're K-State. Nuremberg he leads the league in return average at 29.9, but again, some of that skewed. He has a 99-yard return in there of the 15 that he's taken back.
And he missed a couple games.
Yeah. So if you do the math on this, and I know that this isn't necessarily fair because I know how averages work, but he is averaging under 25 yards on his returns if you factor out the kick return that he took against Army. And again, no disrespect to the military, but Army college football players are not the same as Texas Tech college football players. So I think there's a time for it. I don't want it to be completely shut down and stored away because I do think you have a weapon there, but the weapon has one too many times been turned on you and backfired or, accidentally like friendly fire essentially from Bryce Nuremberg this year. So you've got to be smarter about it. And then on the punts, like there was a time early where Sterling Lockett felt sure-handed and like you trusted him back there. But now, like, it's getting a little shaky, and I don't know if he's in his head about, do I need to stop this one from bouncing and rolling or whatever? Like, you're kind of at the point where just stop screwing with those two, and if you have to start a drive at the 5-yard line, I guess you deal with it because there's just not much I can trust about K-State special teams outside of Luis Rodriguez right now. The other thing that I wanted to ask you, in terms of how this game plays out, if K-State is overwhelmed on offense, do you think that the defense is able to keep them hanging around late into the third quarter, into the fourth quarter? Or is it if K-State's getting outmanned, outclassed, that Tech is going to have this thing under wraps by essentially halfway through the third? So we're looking at like a 28-3 game or something at any point.
Boy, if it's 28-3, I mean, what are we doing?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I just don't know. Like, I'm curious where your head is at. If you think like that is legitimately in play, even if K-State's not making mistakes, like if the offense just goes out there, can't do anything, and it's punt, like, is the defense for K-State going to be able to answer enough to keep it in the realm of possibility later in the game?
I mean, if it gets to that point, I feel like the ball is just rolling downhill at that point. Like the defense is going to say, mercy at some point if you're not getting enough from your offense. Now, maybe you can just keep it 6-3, 9-3 for 3 quarters. I think you're asking a lot from your defense, but maybe your defense is dominating them the same way. I don't know.
Yeah.
But they don't have as many problems to deal with as Kansas State does.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, prediction time. Where do you go for the final score of K-State and Texas Tech? Do you believe?
I believe they hang around and give themselves a chance because I do think Kansas State's going to be hyped up for similarly to how they were when they played Colorado in Boulder last year, where that game is a big deal to them because like they basically placed a target on that team's back because of how they were the talk of the Big 12 and the college football. Texas Tech's kind of that team this year. So I think they have Kansas State's full attention and won't be one of those sleepwalking letdown hangover games that we've seen a lot under Chris Kleiman following the KU game. So I think they get the full attention. I think the crowd will be electric as long as you get somewhat of a good start and hang around and keep it a 1 or 2 possession game. I think the crowd can give Texas Tech problems. If I remember, I think Texas Tech had like a million false starts against Utah, which was a thing, even though they still won convincingly. So I think it's a close game. I just don't know if they can get enough on offense. I have a 23-20 Texas Tech.
Ooh, okay. That is, I mean, 23-20, like that's pretty tight for low scoring. I am going to go. I mean, I think Tech wins the game. I just think you take the talent here. I think K-State could win, but I think it's foolish in this situation to take that side. I think Tech probably wins. I'll say let's go 30-22. Tech's red zone scoring. They have to settle for field goals. It gets a little weird. And you're put in this weird spot for K-State where maybe you have the chance and you have to come through. And I don't know that they will, but I think it's going to be a great game. The environment and atmosphere is going to be good. I mean, for a team that's 4-4, it's going to be, I think, as good as you could ask for if you're K-State and Chris Kleiman. It's finally going to feel like football weather in Bill Snyder Family Stadium, but without the rain that we experienced in Lawrence this weekend. So that will be nice as well. Final thoughts from around the Big 12 this weekend. What catches your eye outside of K-State and Texas Tech, DY?
Yeah, it's some interesting stuff across the Big 12. I don't have the games pulled up right.
Well, I can rip them for you. West Virginia goes to Houston. I imagine you're not worried about the Cougars losing that game.
Absolutely not. No. Yeah.
Okay. UCF at Baylor, really interesting for the people that just like to wonder how the bad teams are doing.
Yeah.
Baylor's 3.5-point favorite.
What I would say is this has a little bit of the appearance of some of these like Arkansas and Florida and LSU and Penn State, the teams that have fired their coaches. Like this is the one for Baylor where you're probably capable of losing, and if you do, the heat really gets hot for Dave Aranda.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can lose this. UCF has
no,
beaten.
But I think it could. But,
yeah, I think so. But like UCF has beaten bad teams at home, but they haven't beaten any good teams. This is.
I think this is a hot seat watch game for me, in my opinion.
Well, if Baylor were to lose, they would be 4-5, and their last 3 games are Utah, at Arizona, and Houston. So certainly, I mean, you lose at home to Houston, that would not probably sit very well with fans.
You lose at home to, yeah, of course, but they'll be the underdog in that game anyway. Probably, I would think. But if you basically will say this, like UCF is probably like an underdog that's a little intriguing to take this week, and if they beat Baylor, I don't know how the Bears make a bowl. So that's part of it.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Not that bowl games matter, but it's almost like the threshold of like a ridiculous season.
Yeah, that's what we've talked about with K-State, where it's like the standard is higher than 6-6, but like missing a bowl game, it like drops you a whole nother tier of that was a terrible season.
It invites uncomfortable questions.
You didn't even hit the baseline of not being a bad team. Noon, Arizona State goes to Ames without their quarterback, probably without their receiver too, like their only receiver.
Yeah, my thing is, I don't know how Iowa State wins games right now, and I don't know how Arizona State wins games without Sam Leavitt right now. It was different last year, right, when they won games without Jordan Tyson because they could just lean on Cam Scatterby. It goes back to the offseason where you and I, pat ourselves on the back here we hit the nail on the head. Their margin for error completely disappears because they no longer have Cam Scadaboo carrying the team.
And it's weird too for them because like Raleigh Brown hasn't been bad this year. He's ran for over 700 yards at this point, going for nearly 6 a carry. But it's just like there's a difference between gaining the yards versus like what you can do playmaking for the offense. And last year it was when things got bleak, it was get the ball to Scadaboo, and he's just going to make things happen for us. But obviously you don't have that this year. And when you lose a special player, it can hold you back a little bit.
It kind of what happened when Kent State lost Deuce. I mean, but then they had DJ Giddens, so it like, and now they don't have him, and they don't have Dylan Edwards. Like, don't underestimate the loss of a supreme playmaker if you don't have a proven one waiting in the wings.
Yeah. I'm going Steve Prohm style, bringing my kid to the press conference after a loss right now. Sorry about that. Oklahoma State at KU at 3:00, ESPN Plus special right here. Look, KU's a 24.5 point favorite. This to me feels like one of those where you go, KU covers, but like, what's $5 on Oklahoma State money line? $5 to win 60. Like, if Oklahoma State was going to win a game this year, you're looking at maybe their best chance remaining right now because it's K-State at home. And look, I get it. K-State sucks in Stillwater. I don't think they're losing to this team as long as they keep the focus they have now. Then they play at UCF and they play Iowa State. KU's a team that you could be facing a little bit of a sick puppy right here. Like, this is your best chance if you're Oklahoma State, I think.
Maybe I don't see it that way. I think it's more likely KU wins by 40.
Oh, look, I agree. I think that's the more likely outcome in our picks. I will be taking KU to cover. I just think if KU doesn't, it will invite a situation where I won't be shocked if it's like a tie game in the fourth quarter and, KU's having some form of a meltdown. Then night games, 6:00, Arizona, Colorado. Arizona's a 4.5 point favorite. Colorado's not been very good in Big 12 play, but I still really can't get over the fact that I don't like Arizona. I don't think they're that good, and I think Colorado is at least going to cover in this one.
I mean, they've looked so bad lately.
Yeah, I mean, it's not been fantastic. They got blown out by Utah, but before that, they beat Iowa State. They only lost by 3 to BYU. Got blasted. Well, the TCU game was close. They lost by 2 touchdowns, but that was a final play fluky cover for TCU.
For us, I mean, just for me and you and our angle this entire season, we really need Colorado to win this game.
True. Yeah. Late game means something. 9:15 ESPN, Cincinnati at Utah. Utah a 10.5 point favorite against the Bearcats. I see why it goes there. It feels a little disrespectful, but when push comes to shove, I think I lean more towards taking Utah to cover just because I kind of think that setting might engulf Cincinnati because I don't think they're accustomed to it.
I'll tell you what, if they set the line at 10.5, that means they are totally cool, the books. They are totally cool with everyone putting the money on Cincinnati, which means they are very comfortable with their position on Utah. So you're probably right. On the surface, I would say, man, I think Cincinnati covers, Utah wins. But that line tells me that Utah is probably going to cover because the books think that they can really they can pick a side here with a big enough number that everyone else will take the other one, and so they can make a killing. That's what this line tells me. I think I did bet this game, and I think I took the over because I was like, I want nothing to do with this line because it smelled weird. Utah beating Cincinnati would be. I said we weren't going to talk about Kansas State's Big 12 title chances, but they need to root for the Utes.
True. And then, if just a little look ahead, there is another big game in the Big 12 next week, BYU at Texas Tech. I did point out because I guess Reese Davis made some comments alluding to they might be looking at that for College Game Day, which will be in Salt Lake City for Utah and Cincinnati this weekend. But I did say that the number one rule in Big 12 football is the second you start planning a College Game Day appearance ahead of time, somebody blows it, and BYU doesn't play this weekend. So just watch out, Texas Tech, because I can think of a number of occasions where K-State has been involved in a scenario like that. You think 2022, I know for a fact that game day was lining up, getting ready to come to K-State for the Oklahoma State game. And then Adrian Martinez got hurt. And then Will Howard got hurt. And then Jake Rubley undid a lead and was down by double digits by the time Will Howard could come back into the game in the fourth quarter in Fort Worth. So it was axed because Oklahoma State had survived Texas earlier in the day. Then you can go back. 2011, K-State beats KU. They're unbeaten. They're going to host Oklahoma the next week. And guess who beat Oklahoma that night? Texas Tech, and ruined it. So it happens all the time in the Big 12. This league is too dicey to predict multiple weeks in advance, and K-State's going to try to play spoiler to Texas Tech this weekend in Manhattan. That will do it for us today. When we come back tomorrow, Drew and I will have more K-State, Texas Tech, and football conversations. And then looking ahead to Saturday, we'll be live after the game discussing whatever takes place between the Cats and the Red Raiders as K-State looks for their 9th straight win over Texas Tech, the baby streak that K-State has going. They've won 12 of 13. The only loss in that time frame, 2015, when K-State was terrible. All right, for Derek Young, I'm Mason Voth. Thanks for watching and listening to K-State Online. Head on over to On3, find KSO to get more info and coverage of the Cats. A lot of written stuff. You can catch up on the message boards as well, as long as you're a member of On3 and KSO. We're out of here and talk to you again tomorrow on K-State Online.